Greetings to everyone, friends, across all Ukrainian Telegram channels as well as European ones. By the way, information has spread that the European Union will introduce restrictions for men of conscription age who are granted temporary protection. But from the beginning, this was presented from the wrong angle because at first, information was spreading that they would take away protection from those men who are already under temporary protection. Fortunately, this turned out to be untrue, and the problem here is a bit smaller, but it is no less dangerous because of that. Because today the European Commission responded officially, and there is a nuance that unfortunately most people did not notice. I would like to highlight this nuance and generally analyze this whole problem. This is extremely important for absolutely all Ukrainians under temporary protection and those who plan to receive it in the future, because in my opinion, this tightening of the rules will lead to it becoming harder and harder to get temporary protection and more difficult to move between countries, which is also a very important nuance. Let's start with what has been officially confirmed, but before that, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on the notification bell so you get updates about my new videos. Thank you to each of you. First of all, the representative of the European Commission for Migration and Home Affairs, Koriana Ulrich, made an official statement after the meeting of the EU Council on Justice and Home Affairs, which is scheduled to take place on June 5. There are three key points that she actually made. First, EU countries agree that temporary protection for Ukrainians should be extended even after March 2027, although earlier it was said that it would be gradually phased out. So this is great news, because for those who are already under temporary protection, it is now 99% likely that it will be extended at least until March 4, 2028 second. The EU wants peace, but it must also prepare for another scenario. That's why they are now discussing how the regulations and rules for future arrivals from Ukraine might change. What does this mean? What does preparing for a prolonged war mean for them? It means doing everything possible so that Ukrainian men of conscription age stay in Ukraine, so that they are caught on the streets and all sent to the front to protect Europe. That's our kind of preparation. And third, and probably most importantly, these possible changes will not affect Ukrainians who already have temporary protection in the EU. And that's more than 1,150,000 Ukrainian men who are already under temporary protection. They will not lose their status because of all these discussions. In other words, there will be no retroactive effect. Radio Svoboda also verified this statement directly with the European Commission. The link will be in the description under this video. By the way, all the other links to official sources will be there too. Next, what is actually happening right now? Because there are two fundamentally different things here that Telegram channels have merged into one topic. The first thing is those who already have temporary protection. It will be preserved. It will continue most likely after March 27th. Ulrich confirmed this directly and unequivocally. There will be no changes for those who are already in the system. The second thing is new arrivals in the future. And this is where there are real and serious discussions. Euroactiv published an internal document of the Council of the European Union, where among the options being considered is not to grant temporary protection to new male applicants of mobilization age after a possible change in the rules. You know, this is a very important point because you might think, so what, right? But I want to remind you that we have such a concept as leaving Ukraine through the mountains, right? And in this case, the European Union is actually closing off this possibility on their side. And I even want to make a separate video about this. So what will happen to men who try to leave Ukraine outside of official checkpoints, through the mountains, swimming across the Tisa River, and so on? If you want to see such a video, because it will actually be very tough and it will be up to the European Union, not Ukraine. If you're interested in this video, comment below and I'll make it. At the same time, Poland officially supports this same approach. Polish diplomats insist that denying automatic protection to men of conscription age is fair, and that's how it should be. So in fact, now Ukrainian refugees will effectively be split into two categories, before implementation and after implementation. Whether this will be from March 4th, 2027, or if they will implement it even earlier, we don't know yet. Now, But this is also critical because it's just one of the options on the table. This is not a final decision yet, and any official change requires a formal proposal from the European Commission. There is no such proposal publicly yet. It might appear today or tomorrow. So make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new developments. I will definitely make a separate video about this on the channel as well. Dali. Next, how news Telegram channels manipulated these issues yesterday and the day before. We need to talk about this here because a lot of panic was stirred up. Telegram channels reported this way and claimed that Poland has already moved from statements to action, that men aged 18 to 60 no longer receive automatic collective temporary protection, but that's not true, and here's why. Poland really did change the conditions for Ukrainians, but it did not cancel temporary protection for men. It introduced stricter conditions for receiving payments and social services. These are different things that directly concern lawful residents in Poland. So Poland did not change it, just like no other country that is part of the European Union. Because at the moment, temporary protection has been and still is in effect until March 4, 2027. That's it. They no longer receive automatic protection and receive protection, but with new conditions. These are also fundamentally different statements, because the first means that it's absolutely impossible to get protection, while the second means that certain conditions must be met. It was also claimed that, yes, the Chancellor of Germany openly stated that he would support restrictions on men entering the European Union. There is also no such direct quote, so there is a general position of Germany that it would be good to limit all opportunities for Ukrainian men in Europe, but again, this is just a position. And again, it does not correspond to what was written in the Telegram channels. Next, the mechanism of panic in all this is very simple. First of all, it's an internal document of the EU Council with options for the future that will be considered later. Various Telegram channels and even some Ukrainian media, strange as it may sound, use this as an established fact. And they use it, I don't know, to work for the internal audience. And probably so that those who are in Ukraine would clap their hands and say how great it is that all those damned Ukrainians from Europe will be sent back to Ukraine for the war. So that those who already live in Europe would also have a hard time, just like we do here. But we see that words and real actions are two completely different things. But again, Telegram channels won't write about this anymore. So actually, should you panic? In fact, it all depends on your specific situation. If as of today you already have temporary protection, then today's news is more positive than negative for you. Because the European Commission is now settling the issue clearly, and they are already saying directly that temporary protection will be extended until March 4, 2028. So, there is no reason to panic. If you do not yet have temporary protection and are only planning to leave, then this is where there is very serious uncertainty right now. Because the rules for new arrivals can really change, especially for men of conscription age. When exactly and how exactly is still unknown, and there is no official position from the European Commission yet. But we are already expecting it any day now. So, if you are already in the European Union and are thinking about switching to another status, then this is probably the best protection from any of these discussions. Yes, because in that case, for example, you change your temporary protection status to a work-based residence permit, for example, and that's it. All that talk about temporary protection doesn't concern you anymore, and it doesn't matter what happens next. And next we have the practical section. What do you actually need to keep track of right now in order to feel safe? There are three main things I've highlighted. The first is the official position of the European Commission. Not just some statements at press conferences, but specific documents that will already have been finalized. Because it is this official legal position that will determine whether anything will change for Ukrainians in Europe or if everything will remain as it is. Any statements being made now, even by official representatives, are just speculation until the relevant documents are signed. The second is the meeting of the Council of the European Union in July and August. After the official proposal, the member countries will vote, and then there will be real clarity, and third is the position of your specific country. Poland has already stated its position, yes, and we know that they are now transferring everyone to the Zucker card, TSUKR. The Czech Republic has basically also stated its position, but Germany, where the largest number of Ukrainian refugees are currently located, has not yet confirmed either support or the exclusion of men from new applications. So this can also vary from country to country. And just now, I also read information that the Ministry of the Interior of Austria, for example, has stated that they will advocate for the exclusion of Ukrainian men from temporary protection, and that newly arrived Ukrainians of conscription age will not be granted temporary protection. So it will be necessary either not to choose Austria or to immediately obtain some other statuses. So basically, the main rule that I want to remind you about is that you need to check all the information you read, see, or someone tells you on the internet 10 times. Go to Google, use Google, and look for information in some other sources as well, because usually we see that Ukrainian Telegram channels present information in a very one-sided way. Usually it's presented as if everyone abroad are damn draft dodgers and not real Ukrainians, and those who live in Ukraine are the true Ukrainians, and that real Ukrainians can only be in Ukraine, and those who are abroad are no longer our people. But if we gather them all and forcibly bring them back to Ukraine, it will be a crazy victory. But we see that all of this, in my opinion, is just for internal consumption. In order to distract from corruption issues, to overshadow corruption scandals that are developing, impunity, forced mobilization, and so on. And by the way, against the backdrop of all this, all these talks about Ukrainians abroad, quietly under the radar, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine rejected the proposal to introduce a ban on bail for top corrupt officials. So there was a proposal not to give top corrupt officials the opportunity to be released on bail and thus avoid staying in pretrial detention. Well, and actually during wartime, in my opinion, this is a very, very good idea, because we see that absolutely all the top corrupt officials who were supposed to be in pretrial detention while the investigation is ongoing are all now free, because they collected a bit of kickbacks, 150 million hryvnias each in just a few days, and got out. There was actually a proposal not to release them from prison so that they would know they can't buy their way out for a small percentage of their bribes, but that was rejected. But we see that no one is even talking about this anywhere, because right now everyone is only spreading information about what will happen to Ukrainians abroad, or about an attack from Belarus, which, by the way, we see that everyone has already forgotten about. In the past week, there have been no plans for an attack from Belarus on Ukraine. So, friends, that's the situation we have. What do you think about this? Write your thoughts in the comments. It will be very interesting to read your opinions. I wish everyone a great day. See you.